whenever we have an agent, we have this kind of structure for the agent. So we have like an orchestrator, which is trying to delegate tasks to whatever your prompt says. So say you want like some knowledge information, then it says like, okay, I need to connect to this knowledge source, to like Dataverse or whatever, and gives you back the information. Say you say, okay, create a new task, create a new project, whatever. It goes in, says like, okay, I need to select like a workflow that is actually performing this creation of a project, and then also obviously like autonomy if you have agents that do all this autonomously. And all those models are based on large language models, for example, GPT-4 or 4.5. And that, like, this is for agents, but the same applies for Copilot basically. So Copilot itself is basically just like a really big agent that you build on top. Right. For agents, you can also do two different approaches for it. You have declarative agents, which are what we talked about earlier, extensibilities for the Copilot itself. So if you're in Copilot, what Joe said before, you have this UI where you just write with Copilot, and you can address like several declarative agents in there as well. So you don't have to leave these interfaces at the whole time. These agents can connect, like we said before, to like Graph Connect, to Power Platform, to all kinds of sorts. They can implement plugins. They can connect with APIs and all this kind of stuff. And if you're more dedicated and you have like more specific requests, you can also use custom engine agents. So there you go into more depth. You can take your own models, which you build on top. Because if you do declarative agents, then you're building on top of the Copilot model foundation. So if you go to custom engine agents, you can go more in depth. You can choose your own model that is built on. You can do more stuff with like Azure AI and all this kind of stuff. So, like I said before, everyone can build an agent. So it doesn't matter if you're a developer or if you're like salesperson, if you're an accountant, whatever. You don't have to know much about like coding or developing. You can just build an agent in Teams. There's not much, like you don't have to do much to just build an agent in Teams. You can have Copilot Studios where you can build more dedicated agents for like more specific requests. And then you can go more into the rabbit hole with like Pro Code and use Copilot Studio together with Azure AI. So you can do Azure AI search, for example, to get more specific knowledge, for example, or use more models for specific tasks. I don't know, image creation, code interpretation, whatever you like. Right, and with this, I think we're off to.
Thank you so much. So yes, let's touch briefly on Azure AI Foundry. I do get a lot of questions on this topic. Okay, where should I start? What is the point of all this Azure stuff? When should I consider using this over, for example, Copilot Studio? There's a few different scenarios where it becomes a bit more essential to consider. The first is, okay, if we are working with, a heap, or what would term to be a heap of enterprise data. If we find ourselves working with complex data sources, large unstructured data sources, lots of documents above and beyond, what Copilot Studio can handle due to some of the built-in limits, then here with the Azure services, particularly Azure AI Search, we can start to leverage it this way. The benefit of the Foundry, as we alluded upon a few seconds ago, is, and also talked about earlier, is you can choose your model. If you're using Copilot Studio today, you're kind of, to a certain extent, locked in to using one of the OpenAI models, and these are pretty good for most scenarios, but it could be that maybe you've done some testing, you've maybe realized that DeepSeek or Mistral, or maybe some of the Meta LLMs are a bit better for your usage case. It could be that you want to have a fine-tuned model, a model where you've gone and done some training on top of it with your own data to get it even further. So with Azure AI Foundry, we can do this. We can bring in all these different models and really stay ahead of the curve, because all the time we're seeing these new models being released. It may be that there's one for a particular scenario that is going to be good for us. We want to have the ability to test that very quickly. With Foundry, we can sort of do this as well. Azure platform as well also affords a lot of really nice integration touch points, integration with services like log analytics, virtual network support, all of that sort of good stuff. So those are some of the key scenarios where you might want to consider going across into the Azure side. And what we have here with the Foundry, which was released towards the back end of last year, is basically just a way of being able to manage everything that I've spoken about in one simple interface. We spin up the resource in the Azure side, we go into it, we can then create our different sort of projects, effectively just providing a nice wrapper and a nice interface for developers or for business users to go in and play around with all of this. And this is where most of the investments are now going towards this now. If in the past you've done some playing around with what used to be the Azure AI service and that interface there, then you should probably think about gradually moving across into Foundry, because this is where things are going to be improved and developed further in the future. So ideally, from a use case standpoint, as I mentioned, we're getting into the more complex scenarios here, where we want to maybe do more advanced things like transaction and fraud detection. These are important areas, as we've seen earlier today. It's becoming possible now for people to imitate anyone, imitate their voices, imitate their even signatures. I saw quite a good one yesterday where someone was able, using the latest OpenAI models, to actually generate a fairly realistic looking invoice or receipt, which could then be maybe used as part of some expense fraud activity or something like that. So with Foundry, we can start to build these solutions that can analyze and generate some kind of indication or warning if something maybe is a little bit sort of suspect. We've done some testing with this around a sort of signature fraud detection tool, and the early results on it has been quite promising in terms of being able to track all of that. Beyond that, most of the different scenarios we can see are here. We can basically use Foundry to do most, if not all, of the same things as Copilot Studio. But the idea here is that we can go quite a few steps further. We've got a few less cliffs that we find along the way. So underneath this, there's a lot of different services putting together. We've already spoken about the OpenAI service, AI Search. We've got what used to be all of the cognitive services resources, which are still here, still possible for us to leverage. So what we saw before with the Teams auto-translation, will I suspect be using things like Azure AI Speech, Azure AI Language and Translator to be able to do all of that. We also have the ability to do things with documents, document generation. So we saw a good example of that yesterday from Rupert, so I would fully suspect that it's using some form of this underneath the hood. And then finally, and this is the benefit of the Microsoft platform, a big focus around safety, content safety, making sure that we're using this responsibly, making sure we can avoid potential issues from deploying out these agents in an incorrect way. You may have heard the example of Air Canada, who deployed out a bot or an agent to their website. That agent communicated incorrect information regarding, I think, a flight refund policy. The customer quite rightly fought against that because it had been communicated to them, and a court ruled in the customer's favour there. So that's a big risk there potentially if we're not using this technology. So with the content safety tools, we can hopefully have some built-in protection around all of this. But generally what I'm also cautioning as well clients today is to very much adopt a thorough testing process around agents that you're deploying out. Concept known as red teaming from an info security standpoint. You test these agents as if you were that naughty person sitting in their bedroom trying to cause mischief, and make sure it's not going to cause you or your organization any harm. Around all of that, we've got what's called the Agent SDK, which is going to allow developers to actually go in and build out these agents as well. The good thing about this is this can integrate both ways, whether we're wanting to just extend out Copilot Studio above and beyond what we can do within that, or if we just wanted to start off in Azure using familiar tools like Visual Studio and all that stuff, this is available at our disposal. And really with Copilot Studio, which we're moving to a point where it's going to be fairly similar to Dataverse from an extensibility standpoint. So Dataverse, as we know, gives us a lot of really great stuff out of the box. We can go and create tables, fields and columns, do a lot of the easy stuff quite nicely. But we always know that we've got pro code dev capabilities at our disposal. We know we can write a C# plugin. We know we can extend out into Azure, into service bus queues, and so on and so forth. So over time, we're going to see Copilot Studio also evolve in the same way. At the moment, a lot of the functionality designed towards that is currently in public preview, but I imagine it will move to GA pretty quickly. And also as well, the idea behind the SDK is that we can be quite agnostic in terms of our programming language choice, our toolset choice. We're no longer in the days of Linux being the cancer of Windows. We love Linux, we love different programming tools. We just want the platform is going to be agnostic to our needs, so we can just work the way we want to, which is really great. Underneath that, we've also got as well the semantic kernel, which is going to basically provide the middleware, and also how we can then start to think about bringing artificial intelligence into the apps that we want to build out there. We've already spoken about in terms of this entire orchestration process. The importance here of things like system prompts cannot be understated. A really good system prompt is going to get you the results that you want. A really bad one is going to lead to potential mistakes, or even potential people causing mischief with the agents that you deploy out. And as well with the semantic kernel, the ability to bring in a diverse range of models. Fine-tune and choose the model that's best for your scenario, whether you want to do code generation, whether you want to have more thoughtful responses, based on OpenAI and stuff like that. And with this, we can also bring it into the equation. So ultimately, this is the point that we can sort of get to here, hand in hand with the SDK, customizable and tailorable user experiences. These agents can be deployed out internally in Microsoft Teams. We can deploy them out onto our website. We can deploy them into Slack, Facebook Messenger, I believe WhatsApp as a channel is also in preview at the moment. So really diverse ways in which we can get this out into the hands of our users or our customers. The ability to tap into the diverse set of different knowledge sources that we've got, tools that we already are using day in, day out, hopefully. If we're already using Dynamics, then by consequence we're using the graph. We've got things like Fabric and SharePoint to bring into the equation there. And underneath the hood then, the ability then, if we need to fine-tune, bring in any model that we want. So this is the power here that the SDK can deliver to us. So, as I mentioned, I get a lot of questions around, okay, where is the best starting off point? Which tool should I be using? And I quite like this slide here from Microsoft. It does nicely summarize in terms of, where should we be going? Now, generally speaking, if we're more down on the Azure side, this is going to give us the greatest level of control, the greatest level of tailorability. There's going to be a lot more onus on us in terms of being able to maintain everything. Some of you may have heard of the shared responsibility matrix before for cloud services from Microsoft, where it basically just says, okay, what you as a customer are responsible for, doing, what Microsoft is responsible for managing as well. If we're going down the Azure route, then it's going to be more on our backs to ensure that we build and protect. Whereas the benefit of using something like Copilot Studio, it's a fully SaaS product, a lot of those will be handled for us automatically. So yeah, take this into consideration when you're thinking about the route that you want to go down. But regardless of where you end up, at the moment the platform has got to a point where you can get started very easily, regardless of the type of scenarios that you want to build out.
I think the recommendation for that is try to start out pretty simple, and then if you need, go down that rabbit hole into like Azure AI Foundry. But if you don't need to do it, like spare yourself a lot of effort on the way, and see if there's like any solution already there, which is actually tackling the tasks that you want. It's much easier and less error prone than going down this way.
Yeah, and this has always been a long-standing benefit of the platform, the ability for us to flex out to, as I mentioned, for Dataverse, the ability to bring in Azure-based services when we sort of need it. So this platform is very much sort of aligned to that sort of principle there, which is really great for us. Okay, so back to you then, Martin.
And we're coming to the fun part, where we're having some like mouth-watering new agent capabilities, which just came out pretty recently, so they're not yet available, like general available. I think some of them are coming into preview now in a couple days, weeks, you never know. And We're starting with the reasoning models and reasoning agents that Microsoft is providing now and releasing. So far, we had agents and copilots that are kind of like a black box. So you just put in a prompt and it gives you out some results. It maybe gives you references to documents it's using, but it's not much more that you can get out of it. So you never really know why it's doing stuff and how it is getting to its final answer. So it's more or less like trial and error, and sometimes it can get frustrating with that. I don't know if anyone of you had this experience, but for me sometimes it's like really frustrating to try out different things and it doesn't work, and you kind of like, okay, what is happening right now again? That's why they're introducing those new reasoning agents, which use the reasoning models of OpenAI. So we have Researcher as one of them, and Researcher is basically your colleague that is doing some kind of like, let's say scientific research, but also it could be lead insights or market research or competitive analysis, whatever you like. So you could do like go-to-market strategies with it. You could create reports about like the whole thing about like market analysis, what you like, and identify new opportunities, getting in data from all kinds of data sources. Like I said, it's based on the O3 reasoning model from OpenAI, combined with advanced orchestration and deep search from Microsoft, and also leveraging a lot of third-party data. So the Researcher is taking all kinds of data, not just like one or two files into consideration, but all kinds of data from your company, for example. So it could be emails, messages, calendar entries, documents, obviously, but also combines it with web search, for example. So it could take a while if you ask Researcher to do some stuff. It could take a while to process because it does like all this kind of stuff, retrieving a lot of different information from it, and then it goes through the whole process iteratively. So it could also mean that it comes back to you with questions about context. So say you're trying to research something, it could be that it comes back to you and asks you for more information about the subject before it gives you an answer. So it is more context aware and can do more dedicated tasks. It then gives you a clear, that's like the nice thing about the reasoning model as well, it gives you an overview of what it's doing, how its iterative process is going forward, and you can look through all the points, what it is doing in each step. And then at the last part you get like really detailed and big output from this agent. So you get whole documents with really deep research and a lot of like references, all kinds of stuff. The other agent that they introduced now is Analyst, and Analyst is kind of your pocket data analyst right by your side when you need him. So Analyst is kind of, if you have, say you have Excel files, you have spreadsheets all over with like different formats, some in PDF, some in CSV files, whatever you like, and you need insights into those data files. You could go to your favorite data analyst and ask him to like refine the data, do all this restructuring, and then do like visualizations. Or you can now use the Analyst Agent to do all this. So give like new visualizations and get like data insights to the data you provided. And the same applies here as with Researcher. It is based on a reasoning model from OpenAI, and it runs Python code right in Copilot. So it's going to create, if you ask him about any data, give me like any analysis for my data, it comes back and tries to create or creates a lot of Python code generating visualizations at the end. And the nice thing about that is you can see all the steps. So you can see all the code it's creating on the way, and you can jump into that. And you can also go afterwards and say, like, okay, change it up a little bit, but keep the same data. So that is really nice because now you can actually follow through what it's doing and tap in at a certain point if you need more specific stuff. Yeah, like I said, you see, you just ask for this just one Excel file, and then it tries to generate some Python code. You can watch the Python code while it's running. It might take a while to generate all of it, but you can watch in between what it's actually doing. And then at the end, you get like nice graphs and a good summary for your insights. So you don't need to bother your data analyst for like small tasks you have on the way. Okay. That, I think Joe is telling us more.
So other things that have been announced recently, this is quite new, hot off the press. I think it was announced only 3 weeks ago. Some new dedicated agents covering some specific scenarios. So we've now got, as an example, a sales agent here, with the idea being that this can then go and help us when we're sort of doing our daily tasks as a salesperson, summarising our account details, getting a view in terms of, okay, where things are up to with a particular client, and really just being deeply embedded, as we can see here, in the experiences that we know already, Copilot, Microsoft Teams, without us needing really to do anything else above and beyond that. So the idea is it's going to go and do all of this automation for us. It's going to enrich itself as much as possible using data that we've got within our current tenant at the moment, so we can really start to accelerate things forward with new leads and opportunities. We can make those sort of weekly status update meetings a lot more easier because the AI is going to crunch through all of the data there, give us a nice little summary, so it makes it very easy and quick for sales managers or executive leaders to get a grip in terms of where the pipeline is up to at the moment. And from there as well, some nice tailoring options as well, maybe to get this experience branded towards your sort of corporate sort of guidelines and things. So quite interesting what we've got here. As well, we've also got the sales chat capability as well. So at any point we can just go and ask some questions, get some insights, help and assistance in terms of what's going to be the best next logical step with this customer. And again, using the corpus of the data there, the better the data, the better response we're going to be getting. So this really does, I think, illustrate the importance of ensuring that with our systems, we've got a really keen focus on data quality up front, because otherwise these experiences are not going to be as interesting or as rich as what we can see over here. As well, also being able to help people prepare for upcoming meetings, so for executives in particular, maybe jumping between different sort of calls and sessions, being able just to very quickly get a summary about a call before you join it is going to be a real productivity boost there. So with this tool as well, we can do that, ask a question, get prepared, get ready, and not really be on the back foot when we're sort of speaking with our prospective customers. And then next we've got the Microsoft Dragon Copilot. Again, this was announced a few weeks ago. I don't know about you, when they announced this, I just kept thinking about that Friends episode where Joey starts calling himself Dragon, I think, at the restaurant or something. I don't know, a bit weird. But what this, I think, appears to be is basically a bit of a rebrand enhancement around some of the health accelerator components that Microsoft have had for quite a long time. So if you're working within the health industry, so for example in the UK, the NHS is a good example there, there's always been a range of different accelerator tools that you can install to basically just help you as part of your journey there. So basically you're not having to go and reinvent the wheel each time. So the idea here is that we can start to then bring in some of the newer Copilot capabilities alongside all of this with a real focus on what we see there. These are very important objectives for any care organisation across the globe. Making sure that we can have that really positive experience, better care quality outcomes for patients and all this sort of stuff. So if you find yourself working in this area at all, this may be worth a look on there. There could be some good tools to sort of help move you forward there. Okay, it's back to you.
Okay, yeah, I can do the two. Okay, yeah, so we have 2 more extensions for Copilot Studio as well. It's basically a little bit of what I was talking earlier with the new agents we're having. We get deep reasoning in Copilot Studio, so we can build our own agents now that can use deep reasoning. So that makes it easier to make like bit better decision making in the process. We can connect to like other reasoning models as well. And yeah, in general, it's just like I said, it's really nice to have a bit more detailed information at the end and not just like an outcome in general. And then we have agent flows. That is coming as well, where we can have a whole, well, you can actually like build out full flow that is triggered on certain traces, like you say here, see here, and from there it's deciding like what to do from there on. So you kind of have what I was talking about earlier with like autonomous agents, where you can actually build this whole flow in Copilot Studio itself, saying, okay, I've got a new email, I've got like new update in a Dataverse, and then build from there and decide what to do with it and do different tasks on different scenarios.
Yeah, what this slide is also showing as well, I think these are currently things that are in preview but will be coming on stream fairly quickly. So the ability to be able to choose the OpenAI model, depending on your needs, you can again test and just see what results you get. And also as well the ability just to integrate directly with Foundry. So in the future in Copilot Studio, you can bring in any model that you provisioned out from a Foundry standpoint. So any fine-tuned model, any non-OpenAI model, all of this will be at your fingertips, at your disposal here. So the idea is, again, we can be very flexible, we can move with the pace of the technology, which as we've seen is very fast, and ultimately ensure we can get the most value out of these solutions, now and in the future.
Yeah, okay. So I think with that, we're open for questions now. I guess there's like one or two maybe.
Is there any connection now with this, like Power Automate or something? If you talk about Copilot flow automation, is it somehow,
Yes.
because sometimes that's not easy for me at least to understand yet, or all these
So you
topics.
Yeah, so today in Copilot Studio, you can basically orchestrate and run a flow at any point in the conversation. You also now have the ability to basically use any of the 1,600 plus connectors as well. In Copilot Studio, you basically just give it the connector. It's able to figure out the inputs and the outputs and then go and execute that. And also as well, the ability as well to do the, what do we call them, we're going to show it later on, where the flow can be orchestrated dynamically just based on some simple instructions. So there's some really good opportunities to basically tie into the whole Power Platform ecosystem, in a nutshell, which is good.
But I think it gets more clear in the next section when we dive a bit more into Copilot Studio and all those. You can see it in action. Yeah.
Real practical case, so we use Copilot to get the user the possibility to read through manuals just via the bot. They ask the bot question, the bot looks in our manuals for our answer. And one thing that we're struggling with is PDFs. So it can read PDFs, but it can't give references. Do you know, is this coming in the future that it's working a little bit better? So like Perplexity, where you can directly see, okay, where's this information coming from? Because this would really help.
I believe that it's something that they're working on at the moment, I believe. I can't probably go into any more detail than that, but I know that, yeah, they are. It is a feedback that I've heard before. Yeah.
Okay.
No, just go ahead.
No. Just a funny question regarding AI speech to text. Is this also rolled out for Mandarin? Chinese Whisper?
It was, some of the language was Mandarin.
I think Chinese standard is Mandarin, isn't it, Mandarin? So yeah, so it is currently rolled out for that, yeah.
Also, as these four tones in Chinese, for instance, why it is Chinese Whisper that one can misunderstand if the context is not understood. So also, is it relating to the context when it is really converting speech to text?
So normally, I don't know if you have more insights on that, but normally it should be context aware because it's not like translating word by word, but it's taking like context wise and translating.
Yeah, so whenever these prompts are going to the model, it's always including, grounding the prompt in the context of the conversation. That's why when you're having a conversation at the moment with Copilot, it knows, okay, you ask it, okay, what time does the bus leave? Is this time, okay, is it, what size bus it is? It's able to infer that it is the bus. So I'm assuming that when they're sending the prompts out, it's going to ground it in that context. And if there are any sort of like deviations or something it's a bit unsure about, then maybe it will autocorrect itself.
Okay. So I can't tell you how it is done with the new version they just introduced for Teams. But for the others where you have prompts and you get answers, you basically give the whole prompt and it's like dividing it into tokens and then give this to like large language models. And that's always context aware. So you don't have literal like word by word translation and tokenization.
Thank you very much.
Question at the back here.
I think I don't need it. I would talk louder because it's doing feedbacks all the time.
Okay.
I've also got a practical question. We are going to roll out customer service, and one of the reasons is the Copilot integration.
Yeah.
And we got a knowledge base in our company, which is Confluence. And to be make it a bit harder, it's Confluence on premise.
Very good.
And to make it even a bit harder, we didn't have the best knowledge management over the last year, so it's not everything is up to date in there. What is your experience with working with this kind of data? So first of all, is Confluence on premise possible? And second question is there a chance that Copilot at least over time, or the agent at least over time finds out this is good information and this is not the best information?
There's a few options. So I believe that there's a Power Platform connector for Confluence.
I'm not sure about the on-premises.
Well-
It's from Confluence.
Well, either if that doesn't work, a custom connector plus the on-premise data gateway, so the stuff that we've done for years with Power Automate being able to access on-premise resources, those principles apply here. As long as you can expose it out through a Power Platform connector, then it can work with it. The other options would be graph integrations. You can actually ingest data directly into the graph. That's quite a complex option, but it would potentially work. Final option, maybe move to knowledge-based articles in customer service instead, maybe. Might be, yeah.
That was the easiest option.
That is the easiest option. Yeah, I started off, well, kind of hard, very hard, and then easy at the end, so
Yeah. I think in terms of like data quality, what you said also, I mean, obviously if you have like really poor quality of data, you get poor quality of answers. That's always the case with Copilot. Over time, I guess you could use Copilot to improve that. Also, because you have customer service, right? I'm not sure about customer service, but in field service, for example, there is functionalities where you can use Copilot to generate new knowledge articles based on previous cases as well.
I'd
So
also,
that, yeah.
I'd also recommend as well just looking at contact center, Dynamics 365 contact center. Yeah, there's lots of really interesting things happening there at the moment. So.
One more question?
Joe, when am I going to find a video on how to get started on Azure AI Foundry on your YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel.
CRM channel. Big fan.
Oh wow, okay. This will be the first time it's ever happened. I'll give you 20 bucks afterwards, yeah? Okay. I will try and get back and do some more YouTube videos at some point. Yeah, I think that'd be good. But I'm just trying to think who does content at the moment. Sometimes there's some good videos from the Microsoft people. They sometimes do some stuff on there. I'll see if I can maybe find details of maybe some other good Azure AI MVPs maybe who are doing some stuff there. Do you know anyone at the moment? Any good content?
For Azure AI, no one in specific.
Thank you for inspiring me.
Okay.
Then I guess we are ready to move to the next session. Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you so much, Anthony.